Greetings. I am Dr. Noni Davis, and I am a legacy owner of Sya Academy here in North Carolina. Here inherited the business from my parents, the late William Edward Davis and my mother Sylvia Davis. Um, this week we turned the school is now 29 years old in the community, and we're just giving thanks. Next year, we're going to have our big 30-year celebration of all the work that we have done thus far. So today, I decided that I would really like to delve into freedom schools because we're in a political environment right now that is trying to undermine public education. And while I am a proponent, advocate for private education because of the way most public schools are not either capable or refuse in many situations to create curriculum that it is uh, builds the confidence and the self understanding, the self awareness, the historical accuracy of the Black experience, both here in the States and beyond, the diaspora history. Um, that's one of the reasons why I cannot participate in that institution. However, I also believe that it's very critical that we have people who can read, write, and do math. And one of the latest, most recent statistics shows that your average American between the ages of 14 and 74 are reading below a sixth grade level. And so that is really disconcerting. So there needs to be an overhaul of the system. It needs to be culturally relevant to whoever is in the classroom. Children also need to learn about other people's history, and I don't understand why they cannot do that. Do a variation in reading materials, and if you're going to talk about ancient, talk about everybody, and just acknowledge the Egyptians, or like call it a day. But anyway, I digress. So I wanted to look at the Freedmen's Bureau because most of us don't understand the significance that the freedom and the liberation of Africans in 1865 created or led to development of agencies, the first kind of social services agencies that benefited all Americans. And so what is the Freedmen's Bureau? So in 1865, March 3rd, 1865 to be completely accurate, this agency was created for several reasons. Number one, it was to what was the name of it? Let me give you the full name. The full name is the Bureau of Refugees, Freedmen, and Abandoned Lands Record Group 105, and it's also known as the Freedmen's Bureau. So it was not only just addressing the freedmen as freed people, it was also trying to help them integrate and build this foundation for what their freedom was going to look like. What does that mean now that you are free? What you need to learn about housing. You need to learn. We need to make sure you have education. We need to know. You need to be able to figure out how to manage your money. So what this agency was created by the War Department, so to help this transition from enslavement to freedom. It supervised and managed all matters relating to the refugees, to refugees. And so refugees would be the people who were displaced, Africans who had been granted their freedom. What are they going to do? Africans who had been, freedmen who had been displaced. These are people who may have been living in these uh, these states of that were in under the Confederacy, but what are they going to, and how is this going to affect them? And then you also had, let's see, those who were displaced and lands that the government had either seized or that had been left abandoned. So, a lot of folks, they went to war, they and folks died and folks had to leave. There was a lot of pestilence and disease going on at that time, so it was a really big mess for everybody in the South. It really was very destructive, but necessary. Well, it wasn't necessary. They could have just let people be freed and go, but you asked for a war, so you got it. So the borough also supervised duties that were previously manned by the military and commanders and U.S. Treasury. So those three agencies were all came under the Freedmen's Bureau. Um, let's see, issued the Freedmen's Bureau issued. Let's see, uh, rations of food and clothes because people they didn't have anything once everything was destroyed. Plantations were destroyed. Everybody was bankrupt, so they provided them with food, they provided them with clothing. It operated hospitals and refugee camps. It settled disputes regarding labor contracts between newly freed Africans and planters. And I forgot the book that I was supposed to have with me down here. Anyway, but also under the Freedmen's Bureau, they created banks, and these banks were um, for a lot of Africans had worked for their freedom here, so they worked for the union, and they came in as they were doing all kinds of work on these campsites, these military campsites, and so they were getting paid. But now you're going from being free labor to now getting paid. So now you have to learn how to manage your money. And so according to oh goodness, I read it, the Freedmen's Bank, uh, to help newly freed individuals learn how to manage wages, financial education, and then they train prospective bankers. They train them to learn how to run and operate banks. From what I have here, see, they said that the average deposit in these banks was between $5 and $50. Um, and so what was, let me see, I have a picture of the bank. So what happened to the Freedmen's Bank? Um, here was a picture of the Freedmen's Bank here. It says the Freedmen's Saving and Trust Company on Lafayette Square, where the Treasury Annex stands today. But that's what it looked like. So they built this bank in like 1873 or the 1870s. Okay, so what happened is that we have a lot of bank regulations right now. So a lot of times when the banks go into trouble or fall into trouble, because a lot of it is self-created, from based on greed. Agencies go in and they oversee what is going on with these banks. Well, the Freedmen's Bank did not have any oversight because it was completely a congressional institution run by Congress. As a result, they put people in charge, and I think one of the guys' name was Henry Cook or something like that. Yes, and he was just mismanaging because he was looking out for the interests of his own folks, and so he literally, they were trying to open up too many branches. They could not finance all of that, and then this beautiful building right here cost $200,000 to build. They couldn't afford that, and so there was a lot of overspending, waste, not tracking the money very well. And even with okay, thank you, Mark. And so even with okay, thank you. All right. So even when they had, I think they said, oh my goodness, they had so many people who had invested in this bank. I don't know where I put that particular notation, but I had it down here somewhere. Um, and so they lost the money. They mismanaged the money, and then they asked Frederick Douglass to come in and try to save it. And of course, this was in 1874. And by the March 1874, when they asked him to save it, but by then, some of the reason was because the economy after the war was still very volatile. It wasn't stabilized, and so there was mismanagement, an already unstable economy, and then you had some corruption there going on, and as a result, you know, this thing collapsed. And so by June 1874, it was over. They finally agreed to just let it go. But there were a lot of significant things that this bureau did do. And so you had the banking, which is trying to teach people how to manage it. And like I said, it operated hospitals. They would, and then they also opened schools. Okay, so one of the most transformative creation was the education department. Um, Africans, they said, were clamoring for this opportunity to read and write, and they requested basic education. And these were worked with benevolent societies. So benevolent societies from the north sent folks, teachers, European American teachers down, and who were abolitionists, to come down to the South to to teach, open these schools. Africans requested, like I said, basic education, but the societies were the American Missionary Association and the American Freedmen's Union Commission, and these organizations were based in the North, and the Freedmen's Bureau, which recruited teachers from these societies. Now, once again, they didn't have a lot of money, so a lot of times it would be the 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 freedmen, the actual freedmen, the people who were just freed, were the ones who would make sure that the teacher had housing and food and your basic necessities, wherein the Freedmen's Bureau would pay salaries and provide transportation from the north to the south to teach these people. Um, and let's say the teacher in the southern schools, and although funds were limited, the bureau paid the teachers, and that's what I just said. The bureau also legitimized marriages, and I thought this was like very interesting because I went to Oxford with my mother several years ago to look at some records. We were trying to find some records on my grandfather. And one of the things that we came across were all of these records of marriages that happened in the 1865, 1866, 1867. And it was amazing because some of these people, they asked them how long had they been together. And they, 15 years, 20 years. Some of them have been together for 30 years without, you know, the merit, an official marriage license between them. But this was an example I wanted to show you of, can you see it? It's not showing up very well. Let's see. There's a glare. Okay, there you go. Um, and so you have this couple, Thomas and Janie, got married. Harris, and those are their children, and so this marriage was official April 18th, 1866, something like that. So you saw dozens, and it was like when you the record that I showed, uh, you showed it looked like 10, 20, 30 people got married at the same time on the same day. And so what it really tells you something about our ancestors, desiring this education, trying to save their money, trying to get married and rebuild their families. And so there's a lot of contrary, narratives about our folks. But we're the reason why, the stability of this country. And like I said, the education and banking, those things that we were trying to do were to establish ourselves, um, under a lot of violence too, of course. And so the so I'm trying to think where to say. So It demonstrates the importance of and significance of family, marital love, and commitment to relationships in the midst of the barbaric system of separating families through the auction block, death, rape, savagery, chattel slavery, tearing people apart. Um, and so the borough also offered assistance to those who desired reconnecting with their families. So if you lost contact with your family members, the borough would help you come up with a strategy to find these people. Where were they when you last saw them? What was the last contact you had with them? And sometimes families were just, uh, maybe 10, 20 miles away. But other situations, like particularly even here at Stagville in 1844, as the soil was beginning to the nutrients in the soil here in the north, well, in like North Carolina and South Carolina were being depleted. People started moving out west, and people also started moving to the southern states, Louisiana, Alabama, especially after um, uh, uh, the Haitian Revolution was, defeated. The Haitians defeated the French, and they had to sell the Louisiana territory. So that's how we gained that extra land, And so people started moving to those areas because the quality of soil was still pure. I mean, it hadn't been corrupted. But here in North Carolina, they had depleted the soils. And so in those situations, it was hard to find family members. But the borough was responsible for trying to help people relocate their folks. Um, under our current political environment, Africans are under serious threat, and we know that's because they're trying to strip us of all of the things that we've accomplished. But we need to go back and revisit what did we already accomplish. And I thought the Freedmen's Bureau would be a good start, looking at what the government tried to help, but what did we do? What and how did we push the government to do what we wanted them to do? Um, so I have another primary source, Freedman Schools. The schoolhouses were crowded, and the people are clamorous for more. So I found this article that was written in the 1860s, and was archived with North Carolina History Online resources. And so one of the things they said was um, that North Carolina was the only state in the South that had public schools prior to abolition of slavery. So we already had, like the state UNC Chapel Hill. I think it was just like 250 years old, and it is the oldest public college or university in the country. UNC Chapel Hill. And so apparently that had spilled over into having a public school kind of environment. However, North Carolina was the only one, it said, and I thought that was crazy. And they had, let's see, the only school in the South that had public schools prior to, and there was no education available for poor whites. So this was not for poor white people. This was only for like middle class, upper class people. Only urban areas any form of public education, and it was mostly class based with no access provided for African Americans. So African Americans couldn't go. Now, following the Civil War, Africans were determined to educate themselves, and this was of course, met with violence. We know that they burned schools down. Mary McLeod Bethune had to continuously rebuild hers. They burned schools down here in North Carolina, and people would have to rebuild them, or make all kinds of adjustments. Have homeschooling. A lot of them ended up having to create a school in their houses. Um, Let's see. There's a lot of attacks on teachers. So white or male or female teachers that came and tried to um, teach in these black communities were often under a lot of threat of violence, and some of them were also killed or whatever. Um, And so the burden of getting this education really fell on Black people. And they weren't as upset if a Black teacher came down because, they thought we were stupid. So, send these Black people, let them educate themselves. And so, because of that narrative, that's generally what happened. We had to educate ourselves, create our own teachers, even whites in it, because they said even some of the white societies, from what I learned here, who were abolitionists, even some of them were concerned. Oh, do we need to really educate Black people? I don't know. We really need to do that. So consequently, I'm sorry, I didn't realize my screen was so dark, and so that was another issue. So there were four basic types of schools during this abolitionist time frame. I mean, just say freedmen schools situation. Trying to think. All right. So, okay, so there were four types of schools. You had the day school, and most of the time, the day school was for children. You had the night school, which is basically for adults. Then you had industrial schools that were created to teach both children and adults a trade. And then you had the Sunday schools, and of course, the Sunday schools are, biblical studies or religious studies. All right. Um, it says here that African people were so serious about their education that within 2 years, between 1865 and 1867, the attendance of African children in southern states was equivalent to that of whites in northern states. What? So within 2 years, we had the same population number of students in the southern schools that they did in the northern schools. That's crazy. In northern states, students did not want summer breaks. I mean, students in the south did not want to stop school over the summer because they wanted to continue their learning. Can you imagine? They're like, no, I don't need a summer break. I got to keep reading. Behavior problems were limited because children highly valued education. Nobody wanted to get kicked out of school. Because they were so they understood that it was going to, the industrial coursework, it didn't matter. The trade could get me through here. The reading and the writing and the math could get me through here. Which one am I going to do? It doesn't matter. I just know that this is the tool to get me to the next level. In 1867, according to the General Consolidated School Report for 13 states and the District of Columbia, there were 960 public day schools, 247 night schools. 330 of these schools were completely sustained by freedmen. So out of 960 schools, 330 were completely sustained by Africans. 286 were owned by freedmen. 290 were partially sustained by freedmen. 199 were furnished by the borough. 978 white teachers, 458 black teachers. So half of the staff, half of them almost half of them were black teachers. Uh, 37,640 were male, 40,358 were female. Pupils who paid tuition, of this, uh, 15,248 of these students had to pay their own tuition. And the total student population was 77,000. They had a lot of statistics on that website, but I thought those were the ones that stood out to me the most. And like I said, this is from the General Consolidated School Report for 13 states. Um, so my conclusion must be that African people are the reason education in America became available for everyone. This legacy of education must not be attributed to Europeans. We got to take the credit because Africans were being educated. When we were in Africa, we had our own uh, universities and stuff. And a lot of times people don't know what we were doing over in Africa, but we have the oldest universities and learning centers, older than Europe. Now, over 160 freedmen schools were open here in North Carolina. I didn't know that either. Let's see. Some of the first African American schools in North Carolina were, or Jamestown. Okay, so I'm going to show you some of the pictures of the schools here. Let's see. Um, Freedmen schools. So these are this one. Let me see if I can bring it down. Picture. That one is a Freedman School. Freedman School, 1868. Let's see. This is another one. Let's see. Show. I didn't want to do it that way. Let's see. This one is one of the schools. That one I think was in Beaufort, South Carolina. This is the Freedmen's an act to establish the Bureau for the free relief of freedmen and refugees. Then here as the record. Oh, this is the Jamestown's Freedmen School. It was a Quaker school. This one was founded in 1867. Smithfield Freedman School. That's another one. Let's see, and then these are all, and this was another perspective of it, the Freedman School. And then this one right here. This one was this is 1866. This is another picture of the Freedman School, 1866, and that's a Quaker school. And that's a view of it, but it says 1966. 1866, I'm sorry, 1866. This is Shaw University. Shaw University is the oldest college in the South, 1865. Second historically black college and university in the South. It's the second oldest historically. Okay, it's the second oldest. I'm sorry. But it was also, I'm trying to think, what was its first? Shaw University had its first, it was the first 4-year medical college called Leonard's College, and first 4-year medical school in the nation. And then it was also the first university to open its doors to women. Let's see, what else can we see? Okay, this is another picture of Orange County, the first school in Chapel Hill, Orange County area. And let's see. This one was in New Bern down the road a bit. That's a New Bern. Yep. And so you see all the kids there. And then the last one, this is Johnson C. Smith. Johnson C. Smith, what did it say about Johnson C. Smith? Johnson C. Smith, I think this one was 1867. And so that's that one. And let's see, Freedmen's College, St. Aug. Where's St. Aug? There's St. Aug right there. St. Augustine. So North Carolina was doing it. It was doing it now. But 160 universities here. And then, what was the last one? Oh, Bennett College. Now, Bennett College was 1874. I think, wait a minute, was 1873. 1873, and that's in Greensboro. We know about that one. And so these are all during the Reconstruction period. And then, of course, once again, this is the Freedmen's Bank that they created in 1870. I think 1870, 19 something. But it's still, so we see that our ancestors organized with little money, didn't have a lot of resources, and they had the wherewithal to create banks, to create schools, with very little money, under-resourced. And so we need to understand that we can do it. We have more money than our ancestors could even imagine. And so we should not be discouraged. We've got these folks doing all this crazy stuff. This is what they've always done. But what are we going to do? So it's time for us to just rise up and rebuild our own communities. And this time, don't release them so quickly. Hold on to your own stuff and keep it moving. And don't worry about what these other people are doing. We can do it. We've done it before and had these institutions. And just it's unbelievable to me that they were doing this with no money. But with that said, Ashe, we're more powerful than we think we are. And it's time for us to move. Ashe.
If you're talking, they will hear you.
We all want our kids to grow up safe and healthy, so we show them how. And we tell them with honest conversations that let them know what we expect. Not just one time, but every chance we get. That's especially important when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. Kids not only need to know the dangers and how to avoid them, they need to hear it often from you. And when it comes to pain medications, opioids, they need to know that they should never be taken without a prescription and never shared with friends or family. It's dangerous and illegal. So talk with your kids and guide them through the challenges of growing up safe and healthy. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
So talk, they hear you. You can do it if you try.
I'm a St. Sya student. Of course I walk into the sound of drums.
I'm a St. Sya student. Of course I know my mother.
I'm a St. Sya student. Of course I can play the drum.
I'm a St. Sya student. Of course I can work with my hands.
I'm a St. Sya student.